margins really ramp up, and that's what the market believes will happen at Alphabet.
Poonam, got to ask you, you're going to put out BI Intelligence, I'm guessing. What's the headline on it?
The headline isn't out yet, but as I said, we really want to hear more from Jeff Bezos on what the plans are. Like this, as you know, has come by surprise. Like no one has expected this. So what is the go forward plan? Is it going to change at all? Or is it just, same old, but Andy will lead it?
I got to say, it's just, what a funny year it's been so far. And at this point, it's like GameStop who?
Yes, exactly.
It's a reminder of all the stuff that's going on. Listen, guys, thank you so much. So appreciate it and great insight. Co-host of Bloomberg Surveillance and Bloomberg Markets, Paul Sweeney, joining us on the phone from New Jersey. And, of course, our thanks to Poonam Goyal. She, of course, is Bloomberg Intelligence Senior U.S. Retail Analyst, and we'll be watching for her research out on this news from Amazon. We are seeing the stocks move, certainly in the after hours. Let me do a quick check on this trade in terms of Amazon in the after hours. Really, as these guys just said, quite a surprise. Stocks pretty much little changed as we speak, but that news of Jeff Bezos stepping down as CEO and Andy Jassy coming in to take over. He's been the head of Amazon Web Services. Amazon shares, by the way, they're up about 4% so far in 2021. Stock gained 76% last year. All right, you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Let's get a check on, I believe your top business stories. Let's check in once again with Charlie Pellet. Let me guess what your headline is.
Well, a lot going on. Amazon, Alphabet. Let's recap, reset, bring our listeners up to date. If you're joining us now, we're taking apart two key tech earnings. After the close of trading, both Alphabet and Amazon reported better than estimated revenue. Alphabet, let's begin there, reported quarterly sales that beat Wall Street estimates, boosted by heavy digital ad spending during the holiday shopping quarter. Shares up now by about 6.7% in extended trading. Amazon, big story there, just talking about it with our Poonam Goyal. Amazon reporting net sales for the fourth quarter that beat the average analyst estimate. Amazon says Jeff Bezos is stepping down as CEO later this year. This is a role he has had since he founded the company as a bookseller nearly 30 years ago. Amazon says he'll be replaced in the fall by Andy Jassy, who runs Amazon's cloud business. Bezos will then become the company's executive chairman. Amazon shares up by roughly 0.5%. So big news, a couple of high-profile tech companies, big news after the bell. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all advancing today. Stocks posting a back-to-back rally as the trading frenzy that fueled a surge in heavily shorted shares crumbled. Investors also sifted through a batch of corporate earnings reports. Now, S&P 500 index up today by 52. That was a gain of 1.4%. The Dow up 475, up 1.6%. NASDAQ up 209, up 1.6%. Stocks higher, off-session highs. 10-year yield 1.09%. What about the outlook for the 10-year? Subhadra Rajap is head of U.S. rate strategy at Societe Generale.
If you do see a rise in yields, and if it's gradual and over time and warranted as fundamentals improve, then I think they'll be comfortable with it. I mean, our forecast for year end is 150 in 10-year yields. I think it's on the high end of street forecasts, contrast to what we had last year when we had the lowest forecast for 10-year yields. So I think that we will get there, but I think it has to be very, very gradual. I think a lot of that move in 10-year yields is going to happen in the second half, not so much in the first half.
And again, 10-year today right now, 1.09%. Recapping, we've got shares of Amazon higher right now by 0.3%, and shares of Alphabet, parent of Google, up now by 7.6%. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. So turning out to be another busy Tuesday. Just when we've got it all figured out, a headline happens. So we'll stay on and follow any other more news on Amazon and that change there. But before the GameStop frenzy, which we've all been obsessed with, we had the Bitcoin frenzy. And if you go back a month or more, we were regularly talking about the run-up in Bitcoin. It's up about 20% so far this year after gaining more than 300% last year. One of our listeners, Alexander, messaged me and said, you really need to be talking to our next guest. And that was confirmed by our own Bloomberg Intelligence commodity strategist, Mike McGlone. So he joins us, our Mike McGlone. He's on the phone in Connecticut. He follows Bitcoin as well. And joining us right now, our guest is Michael Saylor, Chairman, CEO, and founder of MicroStrategy. And he joins us as well. So Michael, both of you, great to have you here. Michael, we did see Bitcoin go above $40,000. You were buying last year. You are this year. where are you in terms of your buying strategy? You know, how much of your balance sheet are you committing to it?
Well, more than 100% because we're leveraged. We've invested all of our free cash and we've borrowed $650 million. So I don't know, 200% of our balance sheet, something like that. But we're up about 1.2 billion since we started buying. So we have a lot of Bitcoin. In terms of our strategy, we were buying it at 10,000. We were buying it at 11,000. We bought it at 19,000, at 21,000, at 31,000. And just today, I announced to the world that we bought our last batch of $10 million worth at 33,800. I think we'll be buying it forever.
Forever. Where do you see it going?
Keep buying.
Well, yeah, we know you like it. Where do you see the value going? We've had, various guests come on and talk about $250,000. Where do you see it going?
Well, look, I think Bitcoin is digital gold on the world's first digital monetary network. And so it represents a high yield savings account to consumers, and there's plenty of them that would like to get paid 200% tax free. It represents digital gold for institutions, and they've got a big problem. They need a safe haven. It represents a monetary network for Facebook and Google and Amazon investors. And it's a lifeboat for 1 billion people in the developing world that have currencies that are collapsing. So if you wonder, where's it going? Well, first it's going to flip gold, which is going to take it to $500,000 a coin. Then it's going to start to attract capital from weaker safe haven assets like negative yielding sovereign debt, low yielding stock indexes, other types of metals and commodities,
right,
and the like, and that'll take it up by another factor of 10.
Mike McGlone, you want to come on in on this conversation?
Oh yes, well, Michael, thanks for coming on. The key thing that struck me about when I really heard what you were doing last summer, and you just nailed the media, and you covered it so well, was your sense of the history. So the key question I really want to get out of it, I think, from you today is how do you think future generations will look back upon you and us and what we're doing now in Bitcoin, say 50, 100 years from now, or maybe even just 10 years from now?
I think for 5,000 years we had the gold standard, and that was a non-sovereign bearer instrument store of value. I think for 40 or 50 years we've drifted through the fiat standard, and we've been looking for a new anchor. And I think that Bitcoin is the emergent digital monetary protocol for moving money through time and space. And I think it's good for another 5,000 years, Mr. McGlone. I think that 50 years from now, people are going to say this was that transition period when the world figured out what a digital monetary network was and what a protocol for moving money around is, and they can't imagine a world without it.
Michael, though, let me understand something, because what I keep hearing is, though, there's going to be a fixed supply. So how can it then become something on par? There's a fixed supply of gold as well, but can it be something that we really put on par with gold? And I'm just curious what your thesis is behind investing so much in one asset, essentially.
Well, people say fixed supply, but of course, what we're really talking about is 21 million coins infinitely divisible. They're divisible infinitely. So it's only fixed in the sense that the numbers 1 through 10 are fixed. You have the principles of mathematics or arithmetic and geometry. There's 360 degrees in a circle.
Right.
That's a fixed supply. And fixed supply applies to geometry, arithmetic, and conservation of energy and the laws of physics. Like there's a fixed supply of energy and you can't make or eliminate it. So it's not a limitation. In fact, conservation of the laws of physics and energy are critical to the working of electrical systems, pneumatic systems, hydraulic systems, every engineering system on the face of the earth. And so when people talk about fixed supply of Bitcoin, what they mean is this is a monetary network that works and doesn't leak.
Hey, Michael, hang on for a second. I got to do some news, but we're going to come back and talk some more. I'm loving this. Michael Saylor, we're going to come back with, and our own Mike McGlone. In the meantime, back to World and National News and Nancy Lyons in D.C. Hey, Nance.
Thanks, Carol. The government is expanding the distribution of vaccines and will start sending kits to pharmacies later this month.
This pharmacy program will expand access in neighborhoods across the country so you can make an appointment and get your shot conveniently and quickly.
White House Coronavirus Response Coordinator Jeff Zients says the first phase will be limited to 6,500 pharmacies because of limited vaccine supplies. This new initiative begins February 11th and will include outlets like CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, Rite Aid, and Costco, as well as supermarket pharmacies. Both legal teams have filed legal briefs ahead of next week's impeachment trial. House Democrats say Trump, quote, summoned a mob to Washington, exhorted them into a frenzy, and aimed them like a loaded cannon down Pennsylvania Avenue. Trump's legal team denies the former president incited an insurrection and says the impeachment trial is unconstitutional since he's left the White House. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell says the stage is now set.
With regard to the former president, we're going into an impeachment trial next week. We're all going to listen to what the lawyers have to say and making the arguments and work our way through it.
The Senate has approved Pete Buttigieg to be Transportation Secretary, which makes him the first openly gay person confirmed to a cabinet post. Buttigieg is tasked with advancing President Biden's agenda of rebuilding the nation's infrastructure. Alejandro Mayorkas has been confirmed as Homeland Security Secretary, the first immigrant to hold that position. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
All right, Nance, thank you so much. Carol Masser joining me right now is Charlie Pellet of Bloomberg News. This story, we were talking about it on our morning call. It's in Business Week. And it says, Charlie, there's a plan to bring sports gambling to the futures market.
And that headline is correct, but there's a lot more to the story, Carol,
Yes.
than just that headline right there, because we're not talking about me and you rolling into Vegas and getting involved in the futures market there. This all has to do with hedging bets and hedging risk.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, it could be really, really challenging to do. We know Congress banned financial instruments involving gaming back in 2010. I mean, and it's a fine line, right? We know how this, I think there's a lot of nervousness as we do it. But I guess, promoters within the sports industry and of doing this are saying that futures tied to the outcome of a football game have nothing to do with gambling. They say that they're marketing the contracts of risk management tools for legal sports books, and that they're like any other financial derivatives that a business might use to offset potential losses or protect against price swings. Fair argument, I guess?
It all depends, is the comparison here between Las Vegas and farm country USA, because essentially, according to our story, what they're asking regulators to do is think of casino operators as farmers, but instead of using futures as insurance against a bad crop, they might be trying to hedge a Tampa Bay Buccaneers win, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And apparently the CFTC is moving, I guess, very carefully on all of this. And there's one individual in this story who owns a government affairs firm and as a Senate Ag Committee aide who helped draft the derivative provisions in a 2010 law that basically barred gaming contracts, said the CFTC's, quote, approval is highly unlikely. Done.
Yeah, and on top of that, too, throw in the NFL, throw in the NBA. According to the article, they're described as lukewarm on the prospect, saying the agency's got to take its time studying the issue.
Well, and they're probably saying, wait, do I get a piece of this? Because that's, we're involved in it, right? Anyway, my guess is we'll continue to unpack that one. We're going to hope to do a little bit more on that in the future. Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. Appreciate it. This is Bloomberg.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos stepping down as CEO. Amazon saying Bezos will leave later this year. It's a role he has had since he founded the company nearly 30 years ago. He'll be replaced in the fall by Andy Jassy, who runs Amazon's cloud business. And to be clear, Bezos is not leaving the company. He's just leaving the role as CEO. He will become the company's executive chairman, focusing on new products at Amazon. Amazon shares after hours up by about 0.5%. Google now higher by 5.9%. It reported quarterly sales that beat Wall Street estimates, getting a lift from heavy digital advertising spending during the holiday shopping quarter. Again, we've got shares of Google up after hours by just about 6%. It was an up day on Wall Street today. Stocks rallied as that day trading frenzy collapsed. GameStop shares plunging 60% today, back below $100 a share. AMC Entertainment down 41% among some of the Reddit darlings. S&P up 52, higher by 1.4%. The Dow up 475 today, up 475 points, a gain of 1.6%. NASDAQ up 209, up 1.6%. NASDAQ 100 index also up by 1.6%. Russell 2000 up another 1.2%, bringing its year-to-date gain to 8.94%. Gold down 1.3% today. Silver plunged 9.1%. The 10-year yield 1.09%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, I want to get back to our guests. We've got Michael Saylor, Chairman, CEO, and founder of MicroStrategy. He's on the phone, along with our own Mike McClone, who covers Bitcoin for us at Bloomberg Intelligence. Mike is a commodity strategist. Listen, Michael, one thing that we've got to ask you about is risk. And what could go wrong here when it comes to Bitcoin?
Is this a question for Michael McGlone or Michael Saylor? Sorry.
From Michael Saylor, for you.
Okay.
I know, it's confusing.
Yeah. Well, I think that most of the risk around Bitcoin is really just news FUD and regulatory FUD concerns about how will various governments treat it and what will happen as governments normalize the regulation. They're putting some know your customer and anti-money laundering regs in place to normalize it compared to other assets. And sometimes people get a little bit skittish about it, but ultimately, as it normalizes, that risk will go away.
Mike McGlone, how about the question I've heard from other people is, this is a revolutionary technology. How about another technology improving upon it or replacing it? And that's from a person who's a markets guy, not really technology guy. Is that a risk? Do you view that as a potential risk?
Yeah, I think non-technologists sometimes think that, but what they don't understand is that it's a monetary protocol like TCP/IP or like the English language. Like when everybody agrees to speak English, there might be a better language, but we're not replacing it. When we all agree to use inches and pounds, the metric system comes along, but it's really difficult to get people to replace it. And Bitcoin is a monetary protocol. All the innovations going on the edge with companies like Square and PayPal, and the underlying protocol has power because of the network effect. And the network is not just a function of the 100 million plus people that use it. The other part of the network effect is Newtonian laws of gravity. When you have hundreds of billions of dollars of monetary energy on the network, there's no way that's moving. Once people decide what's the winning network, they're going to stick with it, just like we stick with Twitter and Facebook and Google and YouTube. It's incredibly powerful. And new technology like a better YouTube, a better Twitter, isn't going to win. And everybody knows that they're not winning. We want the network that all of our friends use, where all the money is.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, you know, I have someone tweeting at me, Michael, and they're saying, I'm curious about all the people who have lost their mind Bitcoins. Lots of people have lost them, and a lot of them have been hoarded. So how do you factor that in, especially if you're thinking that this could be something that is accepted, you know, much more broadly and used more widely financially?
You know, in the early days of the internet, we didn't have Netscape browsers and web browsers, and people had to type the TCP/IP addresses in by hand. And it was really difficult, and only the techies did it. But then along came Netscape, and it got really easy, and it became a consumer thing. So when people talk about losing their Bitcoin, it's like the early days when they're trying to do it all in machine code. You can also buy Bitcoin by owning a share of Grayscale, or you can actually buy it with one click on PayPal. That's like 10,000 times easier. And so there's a lot of ways to have Bitcoin, and the new ways are wrapped in consumer apps by Square and PayPal. People aren't losing their Bitcoin with those apps, right? It's a different thing. And it's much simpler.
Yeah.
Well, one main question I have to ask you, Michael, is we're Americans. We deal with the reserve currency, the dollar, and it's still the reserve currency. So how about the rest of the world doing something similar that you did with corporate treasuries? It seemed to me that's much more prudent for most of the companies in the rest of the world that are not dollar-based, even those that aren't euro-based.
I operate a business in Argentina, and and our business makes a lot of money. I watched the peso go from a peso to the dollar to 2 to a dollar to 10 to the dollar to 20 to the dollar to 40 to the dollar to 80 to the dollar and now the black market rate's 150 to the dollar. Now, our logical policy is we sweep all our pesos into dollars and we get them out of Argentine banks as soon as possible. But I've still lost millions of dollars in Argentina. So clearly, I think it's common sense. Anywhere in the world you do business, if the currency is weakening or collapsing, you convert your local currency into a scarce asset. You know, if I'd known about Bitcoin 20 years ago, I would have bought Bitcoin instead of losing all my money when the peso devalued. And, 2 years ago, my lawyers came and said, the peso's devaluing again and there's capital controls. And I said, can we buy gold? They said, no, you can't get it through the airport. I said, can we buy a yacht and sail it from Argentina to the Caribbean? And they looked at me like I'm out of my mind. If I'd known about Bitcoin, I would have bought Bitcoin.
Right, a hard asset. Hey, listen, one thing we want to ask you about, you are hosting a Bitcoin conference, and it's a lot of leaders, executives, officers and directors and advisors of corporation. What is it about the conversation around Bitcoin, do you think, that has changed dramatically, that tells you maybe about where it's going? And just got about a minute here.
Yeah, Bitcoin rotated from being a consumer leveraged, strange digital asset to being an institutional safe haven store of value in the last 12 months. Every corporation with cash on the books has a liability as the money supply inflates by 15% a year. If they can flip it to a scarce asset like Bitcoin, it becomes an asset, not a liability. That's driving thousands of companies to want to do this. And those are the people that will be at our conference tomorrow.
All right. Interesting stuff. Is there anything that keeps you up at night over Bitcoin? Just got like 25 seconds here.
I think it's 100% certain that I'm going to lose 75% of my value in cash instruments over the next 10 years. Yeah. So, no, I'm not kept up at night at all. I'm happy to have done it. And I think that everybody can benefit from discovering Bitcoin as a store of value.
All right, we're going to leave it on that note. Listen, Michael, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Michael Saylor, Chairman, CEO, and founder of MicroStrategy, joining us on the phone, and our own Mike McGlone. Pretty cool stuff, Mike.
Oh, that's great.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks to both of you. Mike McGlone.
Thank you, Michael.
Also of our Bloomberg Intelligence team. He's a commodity strategist and follows Bitcoin for us. Really fascinating, especially in a year where we've talked so much about, I feel like late last year we were talking so much about the run-up in Bitcoin, and then we moved on to GameStop and some other frenzied trading activities, and so it's interesting to kind of get back there. Coming up, you've got Sound On. Kevin Cirilli is out. Jeannie Shanzano is in. She'll be taking you through all of the day's political news, and of course, that Amazon story, I'm sure. Check out the Bloomberg. There'll be a lot more. That big news of Jeff Bezos stepping down as CEO. Not going anywhere from the company, but nonetheless, he will not be in the CEO spot. He's going to work on new businesses. From the Business Week team, this is Bloomberg.